In today's video, going to be specifically focusing on the state of South Carolina and giving my prediction currently on where I would have things playing out in the 2020 Democratic primary. So we just got a brand new poll out today from South Carolina, and we'll touch on that to wrap things up right before I make my predictions. But I just want to do a little bit of an overview here. So South Carolina, it's one of the first 4 states. It's going to be at the end of the month of February, and the last result we get before heading into the all-important Super Tuesday, where we have 16 states holding their contests and 1,358 pledged delegates up for grabs, as opposed to the 155 pledged delegates that we have through the month of February in these early states. So it's going to go Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and then South Carolina. And in the polling right now, it's looking really strong for Joe Biden, which could be a saving grace potentially for his campaign if he performs really well in South Carolina. That can maybe build a positive narrative for him before heading into Super Tuesday, even if he's not having success in early results such as Iowa and New Hampshire, where it's looking like he'll probably get either 3rd or 4th place. And then that type of negativity with his coverage could play over into Nevada, where maybe he doesn't have as strong of a finish there, or maybe he goes to 2nd or 3rd place. And then that could also have a negative impact on heading into South Carolina. But still, at the end of the day, it's going to be tough for the rest of the candidates to catch up to Joe Biden. First, I just want to quickly go over what happened in 2016. So the polls, you can see here, between Clinton and Sanders, where Clinton was absolutely dominating Sanders in the polls. The average had Clinton at 58.2% and Sanders at 30.7%. Then we got to Election Day, and Clinton actually outperformed in South Carolina what the polls were saying, where she reached 73.5% to Sanders, who was only able to grab 26 percentage points. And this is what we're seeing in South Carolina, where they have a bit more of an appetite towards the establishment-friendly Democrats and those that are more well-known and have been around and leaders of the Democratic Party for a long time. Kind of Joe Biden taking that mantle that Clinton had in the state of South Carolina back in 2016. So then we take a look at the average of the polls that we've gotten out from South Carolina over the past couple of months. Now, this hasn't been updated with the result that we just got today. So starting to get a little bit outdated in terms of being, 2 to 3 weeks ago all the way up to a month or two ago. But with all of that data, we have Biden leading the pack at 35.3%, followed by Warren at 16.3%, Sanders at 12.8%, Buttigieg at 6.5%, Kamala Harris, who recently bowed out of the race, at 6.3%. Tom Steyer, he's been pumping in a ton of ad dollars into South Carolina, so expect him to perform a bit better than what his national numbers are saying. He's at 4% with that average, Yang at 2.5%, Booker at 2.3%, and you can see how the rest of the field plays out after that. But again, like I said, this data is starting to get a little bit outdated compared to the new numbers that we just got out here today. So let's go over and take a look at those. We can still see Joe Biden showing strength with this brand new poll from YouGov that just came out, having him at 39% leading the way. In 2nd place, we have Bernie Sanders at 13 percentage points, and a little bit more weakness from Elizabeth Warren. We have seen this trend from Warren over the past couple of months where she has been tailing off a bit. She's in 3rd place at 10%, along with Pete Buttigieg, who's also at 10 percentage points. Everyone else in single digits. Tom Steyer doing the best of the rest at 7 percentage points. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard at 4%, and the rest of the field even lower than that. In terms of taking a look at the favorable, unfavorable numbers, Biden, not surprisingly, leading the pack with the strongest amount of very favorable, as well as the combination of very favorable and somewhat favorable. I'm not sure why they have Elizabeth Warren listed here above Bernie Sanders, because even though they're both tied at 27% very favorable, Sanders does a bit better in terms of somewhat favorable. So the adding of those two numbers together, he's doing a little bit stronger in South Carolina than what we have with Warren, but they're still pretty similar to each other. And then you have Buttigieg behind them at 24% very favorable, 25% somewhat favorable, but he's also a bit more unfavorable than these other candidates, and not a big surprise given his relative weakness among the African-American voters. And then you can see how the rest of the field is behind them in terms of those favorable and unfavorable numbers. And what they also did kind of interestingly in this poll is they consolidated the field, which is something that is going to happen as we work our way through primary season. As candidates aren't doing so well, they're likely to drop out, and that consolidates the votes behind fewer candidates. So when they went down to just 5 options, now they do have Kamala Harris as an option in this poll. She was only able to grab 4% of the first choice. So kind of just ignore her part of this, because her vote is going to be split up among the other candidates as well. But when they consolidated it just down to 5 options, Biden doing really well at 50%. And then you have Bernie Sanders showing quite a bit more strength than when you had the field a bit wider open, where he's in second at 22%, followed by Buttigieg at 14%, and Elizabeth Warren didn't gain all that much with this consolidation where she's able to grab 11 percentage points in fourth place in this instance. And this is something we could possibly see with Bernie Sanders, where when you're consolidating some of these candidates, specifically ones like Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, those individuals, possibly their second choice of the people who like those candidates, might be going to Bernie Sanders. That's possibly the boost that we're seeing in his numbers in this one. But this is also something that could help Joe Biden with some of these candidates like an Amy Klobuchar, a Bloomberg, for instance. Also, maybe somebody like a Cory Booker. I'm just trying to list, some of these other potential more centrist-friendly candidates that their supporters might go over to Joe Biden if they're leaving the race, and maybe that's why he's able to get up to 50% in this instance, something to keep in mind. But specifically with Elizabeth Warren, she had the average of the second place, but a lot of those polls, like I said, coming out before really this backdrop that we've seen from Warren in recent weeks, she's showing a little less strength in this one, and I think that potentially carries over as we continue to go through this process, where maybe she does end up coming in third place in South Carolina, where you have Joe Biden, with my prediction anyway, if I had to put my own money on it, Biden getting first and having a pretty solid showing, and then Sanders in second, Warren in third, and Buttigieg in fourth. I just have a hard time seeing Buttigieg leapfrogging and doing really well in South Carolina, given his weakness among the African-American vote, which is so important in a state like South Carolina. Now, really, what the goal should be of candidates like a Sanders and Warren is to eclipse that 15 percentage point threshold to be part of the individuals that divvy up those pledged delegates, because if it's only Biden who eclipses the 15%, then he gets all 54 pledged delegates, which would be a really positive, strong story for Biden right before heading into Super Tuesday, which could potentially be a saving grace for the Biden campaign. But if it's a situation where Sanders and Warren are each able to eclipse that 15 percentage point threshold, then they'll be part of the individuals along with Biden that divvy up these pledged delegates, and that could really make it look not as dominant of a victory for Biden in South Carolina, and maybe the kind of story that some of these other candidates need to try to diminish that positivity for Biden before heading in to the month of March. Now, we could also get a situation where Biden doesn't do well in Iowa, New Hampshire, or Nevada, and that could possibly hurt him a bit in his chances in South Carolina to really run away with things. But still, at the end of the day, even if he is showing weakness in the early results, I just don't see a world in which Biden isn't able to get first place in South Carolina and do so by somewhat of a decent margin. And specifically throughout the Southeast, like we saw with Hillary Clinton in 2016, where Clinton absolutely cleaned up in terms of grabbing tons of pledged delegates in these southeastern states. That started with South Carolina, it carried out through the process, and it's likely where Biden is going to show most of his strength throughout this process in 2020. So that's going to wrap this one up, guys. I appreciate you stopping by. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, and I hope to see you guys back here for future videos.